Neonic Void Productions presents.
Hello and welcome back to Spookocalypse. I am your host, Zio, and today, obviously, I am joined with Bunyip. We're totally not recording this back to back with episode 1 of last week or anything. Never. Why would we do that?
Oh, way to out yourself.
I don't know
Like,
what you're
you couldn't
talking
even
about,
hide it.
Bunyip.
You're all giggly, just like, welcome.
I don't know. I was like, we're not going to pause. We're going to jump right in. We got this. So, again, before we get into the last 2 episodes of Queer of Fear, if you want to look in the description below, you'll see a link to our link tree that'll take you to all the places. Oh my God. To the YouTube channel, as well as the location to the other podcasts in the Neonic Void production. If you want to follow us on Twitter, because I'm not going to call by that stupid ass name, follow us at Spookocalypse. That's SPOOKOCALYPSE, baby. But yeah, go follow us, subscribe, go listen to the pod. It's a lot of fun over there. Mint will be on the table, and today's flavored mint is going to be.
You put it on the table, not the pillow.
Okay, sorry, on the pillow. Strawberry lemonade? I don't know. Strawberry lemonade.
Yeah, it works.
Strawberry lemonade. Keep the lemonade theme.
I mean, we took that lemon and we turned it into a different kind of lemonade.
Hell yeah, we had some strawberries in that shit. Because strawberry lemonade is the best lemonade. Period. In the story. Personally, for me. Anywhoosies, last week we talked about the first 2 episodes of Queer of Fear. So we did that. We talked about the writers, Mary Shelley, Oscar Wilde, and Bram Stoker. And then how homosexuality was looked at as a terrible, horrible thing. And then we talked about in episode 2 with the directors, James Whale and the Universal monsters, as well as Alfred Hitchcock and Anthony Perkins, Psycho, all that. That is in episode 1. So if you want to go listen to that, that'd be last week's episode. And then today we're going to be talking about the last 2 episodes of it. So episode 3 deals mostly around aliens and werewolves and how that is a metaphor for homosexuality.
Yeah, like werewolves are more of a metaphor for letting your natural urges flow.
Yes.
In many cases, the wolfman is ashamed of the transformation and what they've done.
Yep.
And it always happens under like the right conditions, such as a full moon.
Oh God, yeah.
And they get all big and hairy, and then they howl with the light, and then they just go wild.
Like you do, like we queers do. Oh my God.
But at first it was only the men, and then with women it's like, no, you have to turn into a panther.
Yeah, you have to turn to a cat.
Yeah, like a smaller, less threatening creature. And then eventually
It's so weird.
Yeah, and then eventually they became werewolf women.
Yeah. Howling to that movie, girl, they turned the werewolves just to have sex.
Exactly. Like we're not
what the fuck?
We're not here to attack anybody. We're just here to smash.
You're here to smash and be wild animals. My God. But yeah, no, werewolves as an allegory for homosexuality. I'm not surprised. I called it. I mean, there's a reason why I'm gonna call out Kaiju Groupie, why he's playing Freed in Campaign 2. A wolf man.
I did not make that connection. I thought it was just being a fur character.
No, he played a wolf man, but I make fun of him for a while. It's like, of course you're playing a wolf man because he's gay. I mean, Kaiju Groupie is a gay man. But I'm like, I poke fun and I'm like, wow, you're playing a game. You're playing a wolf man. How original. If you're listening to Kaiju Groupie, hi, love you, bestie. Anyway,
So
yeah.
Cat People, the film.
Cat People, the film. Insane. First off, insane. Was this the movie that had the scene with the cat attacking a woman?
I think so, and it's like the woman becomes a cat when she's sexually aroused, and then she tries to do therapy, and it doesn't really help because they're like, I think this is during the time in which Sigmund Freud had announced psychoanalysis, and everyone's like
Yeah.
getting on that, and this is around the late 40s, almost the 50s, and they're like, well, if we can analyze it psychologically, then we can cure it.
Yeah.
And being gay was considered a mental illness
Yeah.
up until when did it officially leave the DSM 4 or 5? I don't think it was in the. It's certainly not considered in DSM 5, and I think it wasn't included in DSM 4. But I think in DSM 3, it was like, yeah, you have to do these things to treat the gay.
I think it was the 70s, 80s?
I think past the 80s, like because
Past
during
the
the
80s, yeah.
80s, that was the AIDS epidemic, and people
That's
were
right.
still
That's right.
blaming the gay community for AIDS.
That's right. Conversion camps are still happening then. Granted, conversion camps were around all the way up to like the early 2000s too. So because there's a whole thing with Paris Hilton not going to conversion camps like that, but they're going to conversion camps were like these camps, but Paris Hilton went to a totally different one, just where parents put away bratty kids that they feel are too much of too
Yeah,
what they call it.
like the teenagers,
Yes.
which
Too
this was
rowdy.
also a common thing in the 50s. Just like I
Yeah.
can't get my teen to do what I want them to do, and then it was like a really popular thing in the 2000s where there's
Yeah.
a lot of shows that were like, my teen is too rowdy. Like the stuff that's marketed towards adults
Yeah.
during that time was like, here's what to do with your rowdy teen, and then the stuff that's marketed to teens was like, here's how to go ape shit.
Yeah, right.
There was a
And then
conflict of interest.
yeah, and then because that was still going on, but of course the conversion therapy camps were also going on at the same time too. So it's kind of like a double whammy. And sometimes I'm sure they were like one and the same too. So it would not be that surprising. But yeah, no, the alien metaphor for queers is interesting because depending on the movie, because they talked about the body snatchers on how if the body snatchers find out that you're not one of them, they'll scream out and get with the others and tell them, "Oh, you're not like us. You're not like us." Basically, how how the straight people see gay people. It's like, "Oh, you're not like us." I thought that was interesting because I never thought of the body snatchers as a metaphor for that.
You could also
So
see it as like McCarthyism, where
yeah,
anytime someone was like, communism and socialism might be good ideas, it was immediately stamped out like, no, you
yeah,
don't discuss this at all.
yeah,
And like the 50s was a time of like wanting to keep order in conformity. And there's
yeah,
ideas for having a domestic life and keeping things the same and routine.
yeah.
And at the same time, there were a bunch of male models on magazines showing up,
Yes,
and they're like
gay.
either partially nude or completely nude. And I'm like, who's reading these?
I'll tell you who's reading them: the closeted gay men.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I was gonna be like, is it for like the housewives that are bored? Maybe that's their idea. And then it's like, no, we're secretly giving this to other people.
Yeah, it's like the stepping stones for porn for gay porn. I mean, I think they actually mentioned that in the documentary too, where there's like, oh, these are the stepping stones for gay porn. Because
Yeah,
gay
pretty
porn
much.
magazines and stuff didn't come around till I think the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
Because there's several magazines and stuff of that nature that came about. But anyway,
And this leads us into gay bars and gay nightclubs.
yes,
They had to be very secretive, but when
yep,
people found out about them, they got raided.
yep,
And then they would post the event in the newspaper, just like, hey, we found another gay bar, and here's a list of all the people we caught.
yep, and it would ruin their lives regardless if they're actually gay or not. The fact that they were at this location at the raid, they're automatically labeled as a homosexual.
Whether you were a participant, whether you just worked
Yep,
there, whether you were just visiting, or whether
yep,
you were just like on the same block walking
yep,
by it, it's like, guess what? You're getting outed now.
yeah, yeah. It ruined people's lives.
And that's where Invasion of the Body Snatchers comes in.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
other alien takeover style films.
Yeah.
And a lot of their the most common trope for like surviving is like, don't show your emotions, hide your feelings, don't let anyone see your true self.
Yeah. Because
Otherwise,
if they
they'll
find out about you, they'll cut off your head. Basically, ruin your life.
And that
And
also, go ahead.
And it ruined people's lives. And I'm not joking. It ruined people's lives when it comes to work, relationships, family, friends, how people just looked at them on the street. Like it ruined people's lives. Now you can continue.
And this leads us into outer space aliens.
Yes.
Such as like, I'm married to an alien. And it's always like a woman falls in love with this man, and then somehow he gets replaced by like an extraterrestrial who copies him completely. And then the woman notices that her man is acting really odd. Like, I'm running out of things to say. I've used up all my small talk. And he's like, yeah. It's like it's an odd scene, but it's just supposed to showcase like this person isn't the man that she thought she married.
Yeah.
And in the 80s saw this trend of films where people who became monsters start embracing their true selves. So instead of it's like being werewolves who had to be ashamed, it was more like, I'm proud to be a werewolf. I'm going to tear everything apart.
Yeah. That's where you get like a teenage werewolf. I'm a teenage werewolf, something like that.
I think that was probably one of the earliest examples.
Yeah. Because I mean, he kind of just didn't hide it. He kind of just embraced the fact that he was a werewolf.
Quote, there's a lot of good vital life force within you that you tucked away because society told you that it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
Shoot, that's all the notes I had. We kind of blazed through this particular episode.
I mean, there wasn't a lot to go on. I mean, it was pretty much set in stone because the metaphor of aliens and werewolves, it wasn't like as this episode wasn't as detailed. I mean, it was an hour-long episode. It goes more in detail with it, but at base level, it just talked about those two concepts as for metaphors in different ways. It wasn't as like it didn't have a lot of extra stuff in it compared to the first two episodes. Then episode 4 is about the dangerous queer woman.
Yeah, like the threat of women or a seemingly fragile force becoming vicious.
Yeah. Lesbians everywhere.
They're portrayed as predatory and evil.
Yeah. Monstrous, violent, manipulative.
And they bring up Elizabeth Bathory, and she was accused of murdering 500 women in a bathtub in a small town of Hungary.
Yeah. When in reality, it might have just been where the men's won her land. They couldn't stand the fact that a woman owned land. A woman owned land. Like, my God, girl. So there's no actual proof that she actually did any of that. It might have just been fabricated just to get her land. But we'll never know. That's what she inspired. I think she inspired Carmilla, didn't she?
I think a lot of it did because they also accused Elizabeth of like bathing in her victim's blood to retain her youth.
Yeah.
And does Carmilla do the same thing?
I think Carmilla, try to remember. I think she drinks blood to keep the youth. So I think in a way, don't quote me on that. It's been a minute since I've read Carmilla. Of course, Carmilla turns into a cat. So there's a whole a woman turns into a cat thing. And I can't remember if it was this episode or episode 3 where I talked about the werecats and how a woman was attacked by a woman that turned into a cat. And they're like, oh, it's a metaphor for pussy. And I'm like, oh my God.
I think that was more in episode 3. I think I took more
I think it was
notes on
episode
it in this one
3.
because it talks in both of them, but 3 definitely brought it up there.
Yeah, but Carmilla turns into a cat and her story as well, which I find interesting compared to because Carmilla turns into a cat while Dracula in the original story can turn into a bat or a wolf even. So there's a whole thing of how werewolves and vampires are connected. Even and it's even more weird because Dracula can turn into a wolf, take the form of a wolf.
Yeah, and they always are fighting each other,
Yeah,
but I'm like, well, if Dracula can turn into a wolf, then why do
yeah.
the werewolves and vampires fight each other?
That yeah. I wonder. I would love to know where that trope came from. Because I know it wasn't in any of the original stories. It was a more of a modern day thing. So if you know, please let us know. I'm quite interested to see how they came about that trope. But anyway,
Yeah, Carmilla is pretty much a lesbian awakening for a woman realizing her inner desires for another woman.
yep.
See, oh, another quote. Most of us are told that the space we take up is not valid. Most of us are told that we need to change or adapt or hide who we are in order to fit into society.
Sounds about right.
And then they bring up the Hays Code again. And we kind of mentioned that in the last episodes. Like, if you show homosexuality in your movie, the homosexual must be punished. And not
Yep.
in the good way. You have to kill them.
No, yeah. And got to kill him.
And this, I think, this started near the 40s or maybe the 50s. But I don't know when it stopped because we don't really do this as much. Or if we do, it's kind of
No.
frowned upon.
No, we don't really do that anymore. Because after a certain point, they kind of people start getting a little more creative on showing the homosexuality. When it comes to gay men or lesbians, they got a little more creative with it. They get past that code.
And then we're transitioning to, I guess, late 40s. This is during World War II, women had ample opportunity to challenge social norms as seeing that the
Yep.
men were all gone because they were drafted into the war.
Yep.
And then a lot of women had to take over for their jobs and also finding out about other women.
Yep.
But then when the war ended, it was like, okay, ladies, back to the kitchen. And then they're like,
Uh,
no, we're not doing that.
yeah. Yeah.
Also, I'm out on a divorce. I'm really into my neighbor over there. She's really cute.
Period. Period. Dump those men. God. It yeah, girl, this docu-series goes in detail. And then from there it goes into the 70s, 60s and 70s where it's just like debauchery for
Oh
films.
yeah, like it was like hardcore pornography is now legal. It's like, well, then let's make everything as sleazy as possible.
Oh yeah, lesbians everywhere. Lesbian vampires are like the big popular thing, and of course, all the directors are all men. So this is through the gaze of a man.
They're all straight men too.
Yes, yes, sexualizing lesbians. Which, I mean, whatever. But like, I would love to see one of these films made by an actual lesbian.
Well, one of the films, I think it might be The Bound. They had a
Yeah, that was
sexpert
from
who
the
was there. Be
80s.
like, here's how you do a lesbian scene, but she's credited as a technical consultant, which I think
Yeah,
is brilliant.
brilliance. Oh God,
But
yeah,
before we
Bound.
get too into that, there's a brief mention of like the haunted house idea.
Yeah,
And the haunted house is like it always represents a subconscious part of your mind, and the haunted side is the shadow self. I found
yeah.
that kind of interesting. I'm like, what other haunted house movies? I guess what are some good examples of haunted house movies? Because I only got to see the one that was mentioned in which it's these two female ghosts pursuing a living woman, and I don't remember what it was called.
Neither do I.
And then there's a scene where someone is describing this portrait of a woman who owned the place, and she's describing her as radiant.
Yeah. Lesbians everywhere, y'all.
Pretty much. But then back to the 70s.
Yeah. Debauchery. Lesbian vampires and debauchery.
Hmm.
Wow, they really went ham in some of that. Like, damn, that actually was made. Jesus Christ. Lesbian vampires, The Howling 2, like all of that was all during this time period. And it was just like, oh my God.
And then we have The Hunger, which is a film
Yeah.
described as having bisexual disasters.
Yeah. Bisexual disasters, my people. As a bisexual disaster.
And this is when they started to be like, oh, let's still keep the lesbian stuff, but let's have the women also have attraction to the male main character so it's not as sleazy. I'm guessing that's what their logic is.
I guess it's also part of the reason why when we in today's day and age, when it comes to like biphobia, it's a lot. I mean, I could be wrong. I guess because I don't know. In the culture, it seems like it's more acceptable in a way for a woman to be bisexual rather than a man. And I'm wondering if that's because of that time period
It
and
might
how
be.
and that they did.
Because there's more
But
examples of these kind of movies where the woman is making out with another woman, and then when she sees the man, it's like, oh, suddenly I want to make out with you, but also like spend my life with you. It's like an odd dynamic. And there isn't
yeah,
nearly as many examples of like a man making out with another man and then seeing a woman and be like, oh, I want to spend my
yeah,
life with you.
yeah. There's not a lot of that. So I'm wondering if that has a great correlation culturally to
It's also depending
biphobia.
on what people wanted to see at the time.
That is also true. That is also true.
They're like, yeah, we love seeing naked women, and then they see the naked man. It's like, no, no.
No. No.
This makes me uncomfortable. In what way? I don't answer those questions, sir.
Are you feeling a little tingly down there, mister?
And then
God.
then we transition to the late 80s and early 90s. And this was
Yeah.
coming off the end of the Reagan era.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women characters who are acting vengeful and angry.
Yep. Yep. That's where we
There's
get like The Craft and
mhm.
Ginger Snaps and God, I can't think of the other films they showed.
Let's see. Lesbians became villains again, and none of
Yep.
these films were written, nor directed, nor acted by lesbians. So pretty much all the
Period.
girls kissing were straight, and they're doing it for a
Yeah.
paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there was
Pretty
the
much.
desire to see bisexual women being liberated, but also villainizing that liberation at the same time.
Yeah. No, exactly. Period.
And then you said other examples of those movies. Basic Instinct is a pretty famous one.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's a bisexual woman who lures men in and kills them, and then there's that famous interrogation scene where they're like, well, like she crosses her legs and then like moves the legs over, and there's like a brief shot under her skirt, and everyone's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
and this brings us to oh, I think this next one is called Single White Female, is a movie about a woman who gradually becomes the main character by stealing the identity of the protagonist. Like
Oh,
appearance, way she moves and walks, all of that.
damn.
And at the same time, the main character is like, I want to be rid of this person, but I also think she's hot.
Yeah.
I don't know what to take away from this. I'd have to watch the movie to like see for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same. Because I was like, what? What is this? Okay.
And I think Family Guy did a parody of this with an episode.
I think they did. Yeah.
Yeah, someone tries to replace Lois.
Yes.
But that aside, it also moves on to Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
I don't know much about this movie. I just know that one actress looks very much like Anya Taylor-Joy, and I don't think they're related at all. Just in the eyes, I'm
We're
like,
not.
she looks very similar, and she's gorgeous.
Yeah. Agreed.
Heavenly Creatures is another movie that
Yes.
they list, like about two girls who become close friends, and their relationship turns into lovers, and then it just
Murder.
feeds into being murderers.
Murder. I'm going to murder you, mom, because you don't accept me. Hits her with a rock in the back of the head. children, not children. They're like what, teenagers?
Yeah, they're about like high school, maybe 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Is.
I'm sorry, this movie's insane. It goes from 0 to 100, and I'm like, my God. Oh my God. I was like, well, there's the gays being violent.
And then the last movie they mentioned is The Bound, which has the aforementioned sexpert.
Yes.
He was credited as a technical consultant.
And originally they didn't want to make the movie unless one of the characters was a man, but they're like, nah, it needs to be a woman. And of course, it stars Jennifer Tilly. Not Jennifer Tilly. Oh my God. Tiffany. Oh my God. Jennifer. Is it Jennifer Tilly?
Yes.
No. Yes, I was correct. Jennifer Tilly, aka from Chucky, from the Chucky franchise.
I was gonna say name a Don Bluth film that she's voiced.
Oh my God. And she's also, Jennifer Tilly, is she in? Before I say this, I need to make sure that she's in it because I think she is. She's it. Yeah, she is. She's Bonnie in Family Guy. I didn't know that. Even though that's literally her voice.
She also plays a character in Being Puppy Cat, Lazy in Space.
Yes. My God. I love Jennifer Tilly. Girl, I want to have you on the pod. I want to have you on the pod, yes. Girl.
It would be great to have Jennifer here.
Oh, that would be. Anyway, is there anything else that they talked about in this episode?
That's kind of all the notes I had in terms of like films, but we really need to talk more stuff. Like 20 minutes more content would be nice.
20 minutes more. Oh gosh. Okay. So what did we learn today, kids? If you're gay, you're a monster. Yep. That's pretty much it, y'all. I mean,
they pretty much stop at like the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
Gay stuff. And I'm like, okay, what does it look? What did it look like in 2010? Because I don't think the docuseries covered anything of that era, and it certainly didn't cover anything of today.
No, they most certainly did not. In my plethora of horror movies, I don't know. Like,
okay, they mentioned someone on there worked on Jennifer's Body. I think it's the director, correct?
Jennifer's Body is that's a good one. That's a good one to talk about. Jennifer's Body. I'm surprised they didn't talk about that in this docuseries because Jennifer's Body, she's bisexual. Or Jennifer's bisexual. Because the whole line, she's like, I thought you only eat boys. I go both ways. Bisexual woman.
Gee, what does that mean?
Right? If you have not watched Jennifer's Body, please do yourself a favor. It's great. It's funny. And horror. But yeah, there's the whole scene where she like kills a guy and her friend is like, I thought you only eat boys. And Megan Fox is just like, I go both ways, demon face. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. So good. So Jennifer's Body's one, most definitely.
They briefly show a scene from American Werewolf in London.
American Werewolf in London is fucking gay. Okay.
Yeah, I ask, like, what makes it gay? Tell me.
Okay, so here's the tea, and I watched this movie not that long ago with Kaiju Groupie and my boyfriend and our roommate. And I'm like watching this, I'm like, oh my God. So the movie American Werewolf in London, and if we talk about this movie on the pod, cool. At some point we probably will. But here's the dumbed down version about these two friends, two Americans that are traveling around London, around England, and they're outside. I think they're outside of London. Obviously, they're outside of London. But one of them gets attacked by a werewolf. But the whole story is these two friends, I'm watching this movie and their relationship is very, I'm like, my gaydar's going off. Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. I'm like, these two are not just friends. These two are not just friends. Because one of them dies and the other one survives. Of course, he's the werewolf. Spoiler alert. But he wakes up, he's like, oh my God, where's my friend? Where's my best friend? And he like gets very upset that his friend died. And I'm like, cool, that's fine. But like looking into it and watching it, I'm like, he's in love with his best friend. And the ghost of his best friend haunts him throughout the whole movie. Like he can't let him go. And I'm like, the main character is bisexual. And his best friend is a gay man. Like straight up. And the werewolf, when he turns into a werewolf, is basically his, in my opinion, it's a metaphor for like his feelings for his best friend that died. Because he's the one that survived. So it's also guilt, survivor's guilt. And I'm just like, this story is gay written all over it. But of course, the main character is also in love with a nurse. He has like a weird thing with the nurse. And I'm like, he's bisexual. And also the werewolf is him hiding his bisexuality. But no, it's not that gay. Yes, it fucking is. Girl, that movie is gayer than a $2 bill. But that's the American Werewolf in London, basically. It's just how it's the way the actors play off the roles of the best friend of these two characters being best friends. And it's like, come on. I could read in between the lines. How are you not seeing this as one of them is in love with the other, or if they're not both in love with each other? Because you can interpret it as the best friend is either a gay man or a straight man, and the bisexual man's in love with the straight man who's dead. I mean, bi struggles. Because as a bisexual man, there's always that one straight boy that's like, my God, I wish you weren't straight. Because you fall in love with a straight man. The struggle is real, I hear. Well, younger Devin. Anyway, younger Zio. Sorry, younger Zio. Zio, anyway. But no, I'm watching it and I'm like, this is gay. This is hella gay. Hella gay. So I'm not surprised they showed American Werewolf in London in this documentary. Any other films you want to know about?
I guess we could talk a bit about the classics mentioned because they focus on like the Wolfman and Frankenstein and the Bride
Yeah.
of Frankenstein, but a few others they don't really bring up all that much. Like they briefly talk about the creature from the Black Lagoon.
The creature from the Black Lagoon, I don't think has anything queer coded in it. Granted, I've only seen parts of it, but I don't blame them for not putting it in there because I don't think there's anything inherently necessarily queer about Creature in the Black Lagoon. Of course, I already talked about Dracula, Frankenstein. I mean, kind of a trans story undertones there. And the Bride of Frankenstein was more talked about as a liberation for a woman deciding not to be with a man, making her choice not to be with a man. Because at the very end of the movie, spoiler alert, she screams when she sees Frankenstein or the Frankenstein's monster. So they kind of talk about that too throughout the docuseries.
Okay, what about the Invisible Man?
The Invisible Man. So the Invisible Man, I mean, allegory for a gay man who wants to be invisible and not seen by everyone else, but of course he's still a monster. He just wants to be hidden away from everybody. He doesn't want to be seen in that way, but of course he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, being invisible and all. So
He sticks out by being invisible, or just how he has to dress himself?
how he dresses himself and how he kind of just, it's almost kind of like a gay man trying to hide the fact that he's gay when he's really, really fucking gay. Where he's like, yeah, it's queen, work. It's like you're trying to hide the gayness when it's right there out in the open when you're trying to hide in plain sight. That's how I see it anyway. So, I mean, you could see that as a gay man is trying to hide in plain sight, but he's not doing a very good job. Because you really can't. I mean, you can hide it, but you can only hide it for so long. Any others?
I guess we could talk a little bit more about Psycho again.
Psycho. Mama's boy, gay man, not really interested in women that much.
Oh, he's like a man's best friend is his mother, and I'm like, where have you heard that?
Yeah. Because I mean, that's kind of like the mama's boy, and most gay men are apparently mama's boys. And I'm like, again, I feel attacked. Thanks for pointing that out. And how the gay men are more closer to the female members of the family rather than the male members of the family. So it kind of goes into that, and how it's not, at the end of the day, it's not really homosexuality that's the monster. It's more, I mean, homosexuality is the monster, but it's also femininity in a way. Because if you're a man, you're supposed to be masculine, not feminine. So they almost treat femininity as a monster as well if you're a man.
So would you rather say that homophobic society is the bigger monster then?
In the context of these movies I talk about, pretty much yes. But there are some contexts like today, and well, not necessarily in the movies, but like today's society. That's why like the anti-drag movement, and there's obviously some gays in the community that are like, oh, I like my men masculine, not feminine, or people that really just don't like the feminine side of the gays. And some of the horror movies are kind of like that too, where it goes into the femininity of it all. Because I mean, like in Psycho, he dressed up as his mother too. So, oh, if you dress up in women's clothing, you're a monster. So that can be interpreted as that. I think they talk about that too. So yeah, the real monsters are homosexuality as well as in some underlying layer, femininity, females, the female aesthetic. Everyone that's not a cis straight man, basically, and white.
Oh, that's right. There's like it's pretty much every example shown like everybody's white. Except maybe
Yeah.
that one black dancer who was wearing white makeup and then they take off their clothing. It's like, oh, it's a black dancer.
Oh, you mean oh my god, oh my god, oh my
I
god.
think it's from the movie Vamp or the Vamp.
Grace Jones.
Yes.
Yeah, Grace Jones and Vamp. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot in these horror movies that you can interpret as for like the homosexuality and stuff. And I mean, there's a reason why a lot of the gays in this world, a lot of the Alpha Mafia do love horror films, because in a way we can all relate to it on some level, on some shape and form. We can relate to the horror movie genre. I mean, hell, I started a whole podcast based on horror films. So, I mean, obviously I was drawn to the genre for a reason. Now I necessarily didn't see any of that as metaphors for homosexuality at a young, in my late, early to mid 20s, but in my late 20s, I kind of started seeing the parallels to that. So it's a lot of just doing your own little research and kind of dig into the world, and kind of you can see where people kind of pull their experiences into, and how they can relate to certain things.
I did see some tie-ins with neurodivergence. Like they didn't really
Oh,
talk about neurodivergence, but it's a similar thing in
yeah,
terms of like you have to hide this part of yourself or you have to
yeah,
mask because if you don't act a certain way, we don't really
yeah,
want to be around you.
yeah. It's basically, if you're different in some way than the rest of society, they're going to ostracize you in some way. But they do mention about neurodivergency. So like autism on the spectrum, ADHD. Those are the main ones. Of course, if you're neurodivergent, they also throws on like dyslexia, aka me, and other disabilities of that nature are also thrown in. So, and of course, if you're neurodivergent, that just means your brain's wired differently than everyone else's. So, of course, your thought process and the way you do things are going to be different than everyone else's. So, of course, you're going to be different, and everyone's going to think you're weird. So, that can kind of get thrown in as well, that you're not like everybody else. So, they're going to ostracize you in some way. Anything else? Any last thoughts?
Ooh, I think like not too long ago, you did mention something about like today's take on gay horror, or I may have misheard. I don't. You were saying something, and I was like, dude, I had a thing to add, and I don't remember what it was.
Oh, talking about
Short-term memory issues.
talking about horror for today and how that applies to the gay
Yeah,
world.
I guess like how is horror made today?
Gosh, that's a good question because some of it I don't. I know they showed movies like Scream, and they showed some more modern day films, late '90s, early 2000s, but they never really went into it. Um, I mean, in movies today, you see more characters that are not villains that are gay that actually live and don't die and shit. So you see a lot more of that. Um, as far as undertones and stuff, I don't know. I never really thought about it.
Yeah, like I was thinking of what was it,
I don't
Evil
know
Dead
if it's
Rises that we watched recently?
which movie?
Evil Dead Rise,
Evil Dead Rise.
where it's like, okay, there's gay characters, but compared to classic horror films where it's like, oh, we're using subtext
Yeah.
to convey certain messages, that one, it's like in
I
today's
don't,
movies, it shows characters who are gay, but there's no real
yeah.
subtext to them. They're not exploring their identity in some way.
Yeah. Cause I don't know if, I mean, it might just be because I don't know, but I feel personally, movies nowadays, a lot of horror movies don't really tackle that subject that much anymore. Cause again, I mean, being gay, being LGBTQIA community today is still not perfect, but it's a lot more open. People are allowed to be out. I mean, you can get ostracized because there's still terrible people out there, but it's not as damaging today as it was back then. Again, it's far from perfect. It needs to, I mean, our country still needs a lot of work. Hell, this world still needs a lot of work with that, but it's not as, a lot more people are out compared to then. So I don't see a lot of subtext of that. Um, Again, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are because you can always. I learned some stuff from films that were in this documentary series I didn't know that were part of that. But so I'm sure there are movies out today that are like that, but I can't think of any at the top of my head that have that subtext of homosexuality. Or you can, or let me phrase, or you can interpret as that.
Hmm. Okay, so do you think maybe horror movies might be running out of ideas on what to scare people with?
Oh no, I don't think you can ever run out of ideas to scare people because there's always going to be something new. You can tap into a fear of some kind. So it's not, you can do a lot with horror. So I don't think they're going to necessarily run out of ideas anytime soon on when it comes to that.
I like how this weirdly turned into an interview.
Right. Yeah. You're interviewing me, the gay, the bisexual. I guess we can get into the rate if you want to. I don't want to give this docu-series a regular or typical rating, but like, did you enjoy this documentary series?
Yeah, I wouldn't give it a rating either. I would be like just a recommendation. Like if you want to learn about horror movies and where they got their start and how subtext was hidden in various different ways and how in hindsight we're like, "Oh, that was kind of obvious." Then absolutely go watch this.
Yeah. No, same. If you are interested in the topic of homosexuality, film, where horror came from, definitely watch watch this 4-episode docu-series. If you're gay or you're in the LGBTQIA community and you love horror, I mean, watch this series because you get the history of all of queers and horror and how they kind of really mix and why the community loves the horror genre so much. So I can give you an insight on that and the history of it all. So no, definitely, it's a recommendation for me as well. And again, it is on Shudder. I mean, this episode's about 30 minutes long, so I think that's a good That's a good stopping point because I can't think of anything else to add to it unless you can, Bunyip.
I think, hang on, a little earlier mentioned something about like this person isn't like this man is too feminine or this woman is too masculine.
Yeah.
Did you mean that like within the gay community or just as a whole, like for everybody?
Mostly in the I guess in general, because I mean, if a woman's too masculine or a guy's too feminine, people kind of look at you weird. Or normal quote unquote society will look at you weird because you're not properly following the designated role that you're quote unquote supposed to have. So
Yeah, I think
that
that
could
was
be,
sort of
yeah,
covered in the vampire lesbian
yes,
films where it's like, oh, they're lesbians, but they're like very feminine looking.
yes.
Rarely are any of them muscular or toned or having quote unquote masculine traits.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that is going to be it for today's episode.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add.
Sam. So thank you all for listening to today's episode on while we finish out Queer of Fear, and this will round out the rest of Pride. Again, it is on Shudder for you to watch. So go do yourself a favor and watch it. I am middle of typing right now, but we're going to go ahead and end today's episode. Catch us next time as we talk about something else that is very spooky. Until then, see y'all next time. Peace out.
Goodbye.